Hey you guys, Funky Like Feathers here, and today I'm going to be giving you my May wrap-up for all of the books that I read, as well as letting you know what the book club pick is going to be for next month. Before we get started, let me know how many books you read this past month down in the comments below. I would love to hear from you guys, and let me know what your favorite book was this past month and why you liked it so much. Maybe I should read it. So let me know. I want to hear from y'all. All right, so I actually have quite a stack for this month. There's a lot there. You just want to, So there's a lot of books that I read this month. I'm actually very proud of myself. So these are stacked up by the size of the book. So I'm just gonna start at the top and we're gonna work our way through. I have books here that I read that are kids books. I also have some middle grade high school books, and then I also have adult books. So let's get started. Now the first book that I read, this is my Kindle. The first book that I read was very much an adult book. It was called Race. It is a very saucy little number. I don't usually read this genre. I was asked to do beta reading for this book, and I have to say it was a lot of fun. Because it wasn't my normal genre, I was a little worried about how I would like it or whether or not I would like it, and it actually was a very cool read. So if you have not read Race yet and you are an adult, check that out. The next one, it actually was suggested to me by a student. I teach book clubs online, and one of my students suggested that I read this, and I have to say she had an amazing pick, and that book is And Then There Were None by Agatha Christie. Now, I had never read this book, and I am so sad that I never read it before. I loved it so much. I'm so glad that I finally got to enjoy this story. It was a lot of fun. It definitely reminds me of the movie Clue. If you haven't seen the old movie Clue, just stop now and go watch it. It's absolutely amazing. It is kind of a spoof on this story. So this story, it has 10 people who go to a deserted island that has a very large mansion on it. Everybody gets kind of a random letter saying that they should go to this one house on this one date. Turns out they all have old transgressions, and somebody apparently is trying to murder them off in the order of an old nursery rhyme, ironically enough. So it's kind of cool because there is a nursery rhyme. You know kind of what's going to happen. The question is how and to whom. And so that was kind of interesting to see how it all played out and whether or not the ending makes sense and whether or not the entire story makes sense. And this was actually a very cool book. I will be doing a class on this actually this summer. So if you have a teenager who wants to take classes, it's a whole lot of fun. I have to say, I had a blast reading this. I did do some annotating while I was reading. Yeah, this is a very fun one. Next up, we have another classic, and that is George Orwell's 1984. I was supposed to read this in school, and I think most of us were supposed to read this back in high school or middle school. I never did. So I finally got down to it, and I had the audiobook of this as well, so listening to the audiobook was very interesting. I think I gave this 3 out of 5 stars just because of kind of how the latter portion of the story went. I really was not expecting that. It went to different areas that didn't totally make sense, and it kind of got a little lost there. But, then of course it turned around and it kind of ended how I was expecting it to. But it was very cool as far as the setup for the story. The ideas that were presented here were amazing and obviously extremely relatable to the current time. So 1984, finally got around to reading that. Okay, so the next titles are going to be kids books. So here we go. So I started a new series called The Last Firehawk. This is, I read the first 4 this past month, one every single week, obviously. So I read the first 4 books of The Last Firehawk. This story follows Tag, Skyla, and then there is the last Firehawk. Her name is Blaze, and they are trying to put together the Ember Stone in order to get power to stop Thorn, who is a vulture who's trying to take over Perodia with a bunch of his dark magic. These are the adventures of Blaze, Skyla, and Tag as they try to accomplish that goal, and all of the fun stuff that they get through on the way there. This has been a lot of fun. I've rated this, I believe, 4 out of 5 stars so far for this series. I believe there are 10 books in the series in all right now. So I'm almost halfway through, but this has been a lot of fun. Now, I have read this other series before. However, I am rereading it for a class, and that that is The Dragon Masters. I only read the first 2 this month. There are 20 books in this series. The last 2 have not yet been released, and the last one is not going to come out until November of this year, 2021. This series follows Drake and his dragon worm on all of their different adventures, and every single book has a new dragon introduced. Now, books 1 through 14 are actually included in a Dragon Master guide that has more information about each of the dragons and their dragon trainers. However, books 15 through 20 are not included in the Dragon Master guide, which is more than frustrating, and I'm hoping that we get another little addendum to that book so that we have more information about those dragons as well. However, if you have a kid who likes dragons, these are absolutely amazing. The first book kind of sets up Drake and Worm's relationship, and then they really start to go on adventures in book 2. So that's kind of when the series really takes off. But this is a lot of fun. Again, for kids really age 5 to 10, this is a perfect series for them. All right, the next one is kind of for that middle to high school grade, and that was Undivided. This is the last book in the Unwind series. There is actually one other book. So there are 4 books in this series, and then there's one additional book that has short stories that kind of follow some of those characters. And it's not just Neil Shusterman who writes it, there's also other authors included. This, however, is the last book in the main series. It's 4 parts again. And I have to say, this was a great ending to the series. It was written as if, you know, they knew that the series was ending, so you kind of get a lot of things finished off, and you get some answers to a lot of the different questions that you have throughout the series. We saw some very cool stuff happen. There were a lot of twists and turns. Every time that, you know, we read a section of this, all of a sudden we thought we knew more, and then it would change in the next session going, oh my goodness, I had no idea. So this was a very cool series. Trigger warnings for the series. There are teenagers who are parted out kind of thing. It comes off really weird. Neil Shusterman actually handles the situation very, very well. And he did kind of a similar thing in his Scythe series. We see teenagers kind of go through this very big growth situation and handling things that you never thought they would have to really deal with. So this is a very much a coming of age kind of book. And I have to say, it was amazing to watch what happened to these characters and how they all ended up where they did by the end of this book. So strongly recommend, 5 out of 5. Okay, we have a couple that I was not the biggest fan of, sadly. This book came strongly suggested on another YouTube channel, and I mean, she just absolutely adores this book. And so I went ahead and decided, hey, I want to read this. Like, she's always gushing about it. Let's check it out. The book is called Call Me By Your Name. So if you have not read this book, there are 2 young men here, one of whom lives in Italy and the other actually is an exchange student. So exchange student comes over to his house and stays for kind of the summer. This written almost like an obsessive manifesto. And at first I tried to start reading it and tried to kind of get into it by going, okay, well, maybe this is just, you know, read it like you read a classic where the writing style is different and they're going to go on and on about how much they adore someone. This, though, goes beyond, way beyond what you would expect there. Foul language, I'll just go ahead and let you know there's foul language in here. This is very much a mature content book. If you are under the age of, I would say, 16, this is a whole lot of no for you. Okay, that's just my personal opinion. I made it about halfway through this book, and then I just decided to DNF because, oh my goodness, I just couldn't. There just was such an obsessive ongoing ramble that I just could not go farther than about halfway. So that's about as far as I made in this one. So this one did not get a very good rating from me. Sorry. The next one. I really wanted to like this book, okay? Really, really wanted to like this. I picked this book specifically for my book of the month, for my book club, and as soon as I started reading it, I was like, oh dear goodness, what have I done? The book was Behind the Eyes of Dorian Gray. I absolutely love the picture of Dorian Gray. I think it's an amazing story. My Jeep is actually named Dorian Gray as well. Such a fun story. This is supposed to be kind of a future continuation of the story as somebody moves into Dorian's house and then ends up buying his portrait from auction, right? So they end up getting the portrait back into the house and kind of a continuation of the story, which I thought was going to be amazing. However, The writing style here was very, very difficult to get through. Some of the notes that I made were that the story was having redundant and flowery writing that was kind of unnecessary, and there actually were some words missing. It looked like they just really needed a good editor to go through this because there's literally words missing, and Starry Night was not given the proper name. They called it Starry Night in here. So there were a lack of contractions in dialogue. So a lot of times in dialogue, that's where you're going to put, contractions of any kind. They didn't have any, so it read very strained, like it wasn't very natural for the characters to talk. It also was justified. So if you want to see what I mean, okay, so see how the lines on both sides, which also means you get a lot of cut up words. See how there's hyphens at the end of this? So a lot of the words you actually have to go from line to line in order to just complete that sentence. And the dialogue does not start on new lines. So if you are a stickler for format, if you're a stickler for grammar and all that kind of stuff, this is going to be a very difficult read. Is the story premise very cool? Absolutely. Is it going to be very, very frustrating if you pay attention to the format? Even more so. And as somebody who pays very much attention to the format, I just couldn't get through this one, which was a huge bummer because I was really looking forward to this. Hopefully she gets an editor and it comes out with the second edition. If she does, I would love to read it. My brain just can't handle it as it is. Sorry. We're coming close. We're coming close. We're almost there. Second to last book that I read this month, Court of Frost and Starlight by Sarah J. Maas. This is the third book in the Court of Thorns and Roses series. Very cool series. If you have not seen this series up on all of the BookTube and Bookstagram and all that kind of stuff, where have you been? But this is a very cool series. This actually was very short compared to most. In case you're wondering, the next book is that big and actually comes from a different perspective. This was supposed to be kind of a collection of short stories as far as the series goes. This, I think, was one of the most fun books in the series. There's some humor thrown in there. You get to kind of see the characters banter back and forth a little bit more. So this was actually a very fun read and a very quick read, obviously. Strongly suggest this series if you haven't tried it yet. Okay, you guys, we're on to the last book. Drum roll, please. What was the last book? Ta-da! The Lost Apothecary. I read this one. It is a book of the month book. Over there. I did order this from Book of the Month and I loved it. I loved this story. I thought it was just so much fun. You follow two different time frames. So you do follow back in the 1700s to 1800s as well as modern day. And so you follow the storyline of the original woman who created the apothecary, the lost one, right? And then you follow a modern day storyline with a woman who is currently working through separating from her husband, and kind of a very cool way that their stories come together. So I have to say, I loved watching how all of these characters came together. I enjoyed seeing how the story progressed and watching the characters grow, and there's still a little bit of mystery behind it, which I loved as well. So it was very cool reading this one, and the cover is just so pretty. Amazing. So as you can see, this month I read a few books and I had a blast. There were tons of really cool books this month. I am looking forward to what I'm reading next month, so I will have a video coming out about that. If you would like to know what the book club pick for this month is, we're going to read Throne of Glass. This is the first book in another series by Sarah J. Maas, and this follows the main character here. She is an assassin. And she's in jail. So it is how she is brought out of that imprisonment labor camp by a royal group, and kind of what she's going to have to go through in order to earn her own freedom. No spoilers here, it literally tells you on the back. If she defeats 23 killers, thieves, and warriors in a competition, she will be released from prison to serve as the king's champion. Her name, now I don't want to get it wrong, but her name is Selena Sardothian. I keep calling her Selena, like bitty bitty bomb bomb. Sometimes I really wish that there were a pronunciation guide for some of these characters, just because a lot of us don't quite know how to pronounce your amazing character name. If you can get a pronunciation guide, or if you know how to spell it out phonetically for me down in the comments, let me know, because I keep calling her Selena and I keep having flashes of Selena, which is weird for this type of series. I hope that you guys are having fun. Let me know what it is that you are reading down in the comments below. I would love to hear from you guys, and I will see you guys on the next video.